Elias Thorne had a simple rule: never take the stairs after midnight. He'd been delivering food in Seattle for 3 years, and he knew which buildings felt heavy. But on the night of November 12th, the elevator in the Blackwood Heights complex didn't just feel heavy. It felt like it was waiting. Blackwood Heights only has 13 floors. But when the doors opened for Elias that night, the digital display didn't show a 13 or an L. It showed a 14, sketched in a flickering, jagged red light. Elias stepped out, and he hasn't been seen since. This is the last delivery he ever made. Night shift delivery workers share a common set of unwritten survival rules. Among them is a collective agreement to avoid certain buildings in Seattle that feel unnaturally heavy or wrong after midnight. Elias Thorne entirely dismissed that kind of thinking. At 24, as a former architecture student, his worldview was governed by structural logic. He trusted the absolute reliability of math, blueprints, and steel. His final drop-off on November 12th brought him to Blackwood Heights. Constructed in the 1970s, the complex is a brutalist monolith, a cold, imposing grid of concrete defined by strict right angles. Elias's deep reliance on physical laws gave him an inherent blind spot because he understood exactly how a building should operate. He was perfectly primed for a space that systematically broke every architectural rule. This animated cross-section shows the strict, documented reality of Blackwood Heights. The mathematics of the structure dictate a hard limit. The concrete terminates at exactly 13 floors. Elias successfully delivered a single container of soup to an apartment on that top floor. But when he stepped back into the elevator to descend, the car bypassed the ground floor and continued upward. The doors eventually parted to reveal a 14th floor. Elias stepped out into a fully furnished hallway, suspended in a physical space with no exterior windows, zero measurable mass, and absolutely no footprint in our physical dimension. A rigid concrete skeleton spontaneously generated a mathematically impossible floor. To map this anomaly, we have to look at how a building bypasses its own physical limits and why it required an architect to do it. The transition into the anomaly started with total mechanical failure. Elevator cables groaned against their restraints, followed by a heavy, sickening pull of upward gravity. The internal programming of the control panel failed completely. The digital display overrode its own coding to render a jagged, flickering 14. Crossing the threshold, Elias entered an environment devoid of ambient sound. The hum of the city disappeared, replaced by deep silence, while the physical walls of the narrow corridor seemed to subtly stretch and distort. This liminal space operated as a deliberate sensory trap. The environment is engineered to isolate the subject, systematically stripping away normal spatial awareness to disorient the human mind. Inside apartment 1408, Elias found a space that looked like a home, but lacked the depth of one. The matte gray furniture and a handwritten note asking to discuss the blueprints suggested the room was a rough draft of a reality. When he tried to retreat, the exit was gone. The door hadn't just closed, it had been replaced by a seamless, unpainted wall of solid concrete that matched the apartment's internal texture. From the darkness of the back bedroom, he heard his own voice. It wasn't a recording, but a live whisper reciting the complex structural calculations from his university thesis back to him. We can see this as parasitic architecture, lacking physical form. It overwrites the existing mathematical foundation to grow. However, this stolen blueprint is unstable. Without a constant source of logical correction, these points of structural failure vibrate and collapse. The entity needs an architect to act as a stabilizer. By reciting Elias's thesis, The space was attempting to synchronize with his understanding of spatial logic to keep its impossible geometry from folding in on itself. Elias wasn't a victim of a haunting. He was being integrated into the building's frame. His knowledge of load, bearing walls and structural integrity used to anchor a floor that shouldn't exist. The subsequent police search yielded an abandoned bicycle chained outside Blackwood Heights and a thermal delivery bag resting empty inside the 13th floor elevator. Tucked at the bottom of the bag, they recovered Elias's delivery. A single container of miso soup. It had been drained of all pigmentation, rendered entirely matte gray, and it was still steaming hot. That residual heat presents a strict thermodynamic impossibility. It demonstrates that physical matter from the sensory, deprived dimension successfully breached the threshold back into our world. A missing delivery driver leaves behind an empty elevator. This matte gray container provides undeniable forensic proof of a predatory overlapping space feeding off the city's architecture. Investigators eventually pulled the municipal archives, examining the original 1970s blueprints for the Blackwood Heights complex. Hidden deep in the margins of the 13th floor plans, they discovered a chilling detail. A small hand-sketched staircase leading into a completely empty void, deliberately labeled the guard's room. This label indicates that the 14th floor wasn't an accidental glitch. The original architect acknowledged the presence of this void and designated a specific space to monitor the threshold between our reality and the one above. Pay very close attention the next time you ride an elevator late at night. If you pass the top floor and feel an unexpected heavy pull of gravity, do not step out. These parasitic spaces are integrated into the blueprints of our cities. They are patiently waiting for the next mind to step out and hold their walls together.